Good day everyone, and welcome to our first quarter lesson for grade 10 music, entitled Music of the 20th Century. In this particular lesson, you will understand the 20th century music styles and characteristic features. Are you ready to listen? Then let's go ahead and start with our lesson. The start of the 20th century saw the rise of distinct musical styles that reflected a move away from the conventions of earlier classical music. These new styles were Impressionism, Expressionism, Neoclassicism, avant-garde music and modern nationalism. The distinct musical styles of the 20th century would not have been developed if not for the musical genius of individual composers such as Claude Debussy, Maurice Ravel, Arnold Schoenberg, Bela Bartok, Igor Stravinsky, Sergei Prokofiev, and George Gershwin, who stand out as the moving forces behind the innovative and experimental styles mentioned above. Coming from different nations, like France, Austria, Hungary, Russia and the United States, these composers clearly reflected the growing globalization of musical styles in the 20th century. Let's first understand what Impressionism is. Impressionism is a style of music that developed in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, primarily in France. It shares its name with the Impressionist art movement, and like its visual counterpart, Impressionist music seeks to convey atmosphere and emotion rather than strict adherence to traditional forms and structures. Some key characteristics of Impressionist music include 1. Color and texture, 2. Atmosphere and mood, 3. Use of timbre, 4. Fluidity and ambiguity, 5. Influences from nature and visual arts. First, we have color and texture. Impressionist composers aimed to create colorful and evocative musical landscapes through the use of orchestration and harmony. They often used non-traditional scales, modes, and extended harmonies to achieve unique textures and colors in their compositions. Next, we have atmosphere and mood. Impressionist music focuses on capturing the mood or atmosphere of a particular scene or moment. Composers were less concerned with narrative or storytelling and more interested in the feelings and emotions evoked by the music. Use of timbre. Impressionist composers paid close attention to the timbral qualities of musical instruments. They experimented with unusual instrumental combinations and techniques to create a distinctive sonic palette. Next is fluidity and ambiguity. Impressionist music often lacks clear-cut melodies and rhythms. Instead, it tends to flow and evolve gradually, with a sense of ambiguity and fluidity that mirrors the shifting nature of human perception. And the last characteristic is influences from nature and visual arts. Many Impressionist composers drew inspiration from nature, as well as from the visual arts. They sought to translate the visual and sensory experiences of the world into musical form. We have here two proponents that made the Impressionistic movement possible. The first one is Claude Debussy and the second one is Maurice Ravel. Let's learn what their life and musical works are. Claude Debussy (1862 until 1918) is one of the most important and influential of the 20th century composers. He was the primary exponent of the Impressionist movement and the focal point for other Impressionist composers. He changed the course of musical development by dissolving traditional rules and conventions into a new language of possibilities in harmony, rhythm, form, texture, and color. Claude Debussy composed a wide range of works, and many of them are considered iconic in the world of classical music. Here are some of his most famous and celebrated compositions. 1. Clair de Lune. 2. Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. 3. La Mer, the Sea. 4. Deux Arabesques. And 5. Children's Corner. Another proponent for Impressionistic music is Maurice Ravel. Maurice Ravel, 1875 to 1937, was a French composer and pianist known for his innovative and influential contributions to classical music in the early 20th century. He is often associated with Impressionism, a musical style that emphasizes atmosphere and mood over traditional harmonic and melodic structures. Ravel's compositions are characterized by their exquisite orchestration, meticulous attention to detail, and a keen sense of color and texture. Ravel's music is celebrated for its originality, craftsmanship, and ability to evoke vivid imagery and emotions. He was a prominent figure in the musical scene of his time and left a lasting impact on classical music. Some of Maurice Ravel's most famous works include 1. Bolero, 1928. 2. Pavane for a Dead Princess, Pavane pour une infante défunte, 1899. 3. Daphnis et Chloé, 1909–1912. 4. Rhapsodie Espagnole, 1907–1908. 5. Ma Mère Louis, Mother Goose, 1908. This is the comparative styles of Debussy and Ravel, as the two major exponents of French Impressionism in music. Debussy and Ravel had crossed paths during their lifetime, although Debussy was 13 years older than Ravel, but their musical works sound quite similar in terms of their harmonic and textual characteristics. The two differ greatly in their personalities and approach to music. Debussy was more spontaneous and liberal in form, while Ravel was very attentive to the classical norms of musical structure and compositional craftsmanship. Debussy was more casual in his portrayal of visual imagery. Ravel was more formal and exacting in the development of his motive ideas. Another musical movement is Expressionism. Expressionism was a significant artistic movement in music that emerged in the early 20th century, particularly in the years leading up to and during World War I. Expressionist composers sought to convey raw, intense emotions, inner turmoil, and the human psyche through their music. This movement was a reaction against the lush harmonies and impressionistic tendencies of the late Romantic period and represented a departure from traditional tonality and conventional musical forms. Here are some key characteristics of Expressionism in music. 1. Atonality. 2. Extreme emotion. 3. Psychological exploration. 4. Unconventional instrumentation and techniques. 5. Nonlinear forms. First, we have atonality. Expressionist composers often abandoned traditional tonal structures, using dissonance and chromaticism to create a sense of tension and unease. Compositions frequently lack a clear sense of key or tonal center, and dissonant intervals and chords are common. Next is extreme emotion. Expressionist music is known for its emotional intensity. Composers sought to convey profound and often disturbing emotions, such as fear, anxiety, despair, and alienation. This emotional depth is reflected in the dissonant and sometimes abrasive nature of the music. Another one is psychological exploration. Expressionist music delved into the human psyche and often explored themes of madness, inner conflict, and existential despair. Composers were influenced by the psychological theories of the time, such as those of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. Next characteristics is unconventional instrumentation and techniques. Expressionist composers sometimes used unconventional instrumental techniques and extended playing techniques to create unusual and otherworldly sounds. They also experimented with new timbral combinations and instrumentations. Last characteristic under Expressionism is nonlinear forms. Traditional musical forms, such as sonata allegro or ternary forms, were often abandoned in favor of more fluid and free structures that allowed for a more direct expression of emotion. For Expressionism, we have Arnold Schoenberg as our prominent composer. He was a pioneering Austrian and later American composer, music theorist, and painter who played a pivotal role in the development of 20th-century music. He is widely recognized for his innovative contributions to music theory and composition, particularly in the areas of atonality and the 12-tone technique. Here are some key aspects of Arnold Schoenberg's life and work. 1. Early life and training. 2. Eight-tonal music. 3. Development of the 12-tone technique. 4. Compositions. 5. Teaching and influences. 6. Emigration to the United States. For early life and training, Schoenberg was born in Vienna, Austria. He initially studied music under the guidance of notable composers and teachers such as Alexander von Zemlinsky and Gustav Mahler. His early compositions were influenced by the late Romantic style. For eight-tonal music, around the early 20th century, Schoenberg began to experiment with eight-tonal music, which lacks a traditional tonal center and often employs dissonance. His seminal work in this style includes pieces like Pierrot Lunaire, which used a technique called Sprechstimme, a form of vocal expression between speaking and singing. Next is development of the 12-tone technique. Schoenberg is perhaps best known for developing the 12-tone technique, also known as serialism or dodecaphony. This method involved organizing all 12 pitches of the chromatic scale into a specific order or series and using this series as the basis for composition. This technique had a profound impact on 20th century music and influenced many composers who followed him. Another one is compositions. Schoenberg's notable compositions include Verklärte Nacht, Transfigured Night, Suite for Piano, Opus 25, Variations for Orchestra, Opus 31, and Moses und Aaron. His opera Moses und Aaron is considered one of his most significant works and deals with complex philosophical and religious themes. Teaching and influences. Schoenberg was a dedicated teacher and had a significant impact on the development of 20th century music through his teaching. He taught several important composers, including Alban Berg and Anton Webern, who became part of the Second Viennese School and continued to explore the 12-tone technique. And last key aspect of Arnold Schoenberg is emigration to the United States. Due to the rise of the Nazi regime in Austria and the persecution of Jewish artists, Schoenberg emigrated to the United States in the 1930s. He settled in Boston and later in Los Angeles, where he continued to compose, teach, and influence the American music scene. Arnold Schoenberg's work marked a profound departure from traditional tonal music and had a lasting impact on the course of music history. His contributions to music theory and composition continues to be studied, discussed, and admired by musicians and scholars to this day.